Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with renowned neuroscientist and famous god botherer Sam Harris. We're here to very much throw down the gauntlet and give him a ruddy good grilling. Stay tuned to see if we can keep it up for the duration. Mr. Harris, what would you say you stand for?
It's a hard question to answer. I mean, I think there's one algorithm I'm running more than most, which is, what I would call intellectual honesty.
And could you explain for the audience what that might entail?
That's a left-wing conspiracy to deny the presidency to Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
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 But I think it was warranted.
Absolutely. You gotta break a few eggs to make an omelette, am I right? By that I mean intellectual dishonesty is part and parcel of intellectual honesty.
The burden isn't to join some tribe who you'll get social reinforcement from for conforming to.
Yeah, that's just a coincidence. A very convenient coincidence. It's not about tribalism. It's important to acknowledge that treason is okay when it's this left wing treason.
Well, no, I'm content. Well, but the thing is, it's just not left wing.
No. You didn't say that. You're just being intellectually honest.
Insofar as I'm continually just trying to figure out what's true and what's consistent with what I claimed was true 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago.
Or 5 seconds ago.
You can't really even conform to who you were yesterday.
No. You might have been talking to a different person yesterday. Someone who's perhaps aware of the truth. In that instance, you might have to call them a conspiracy theorist.
And that part really hasn't changed.
No. Why would it? So, tell me, how do you exercise this rigorous truthiness? What do you do to stay so intellectually in shape?
Twitter was the real teaching tool for me. Like I just I got on the platform as everyone did, not really aware that I was enrolling myself into a psychological experiment to which no one had consented.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? You just wake up one day, you're backed against the wall, and Twitter is just there, thrusting itself inside you against your will. And I can't leave. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't know how to get away. I don't know. I'm struggling with my intellectual honesty, Sam. What do I do?
You don't always need to have an opinion.
I agree. I mean, I might agree. It doesn't matter.
And even if you do have a strong opinion, you don't always have to be the person expressing that opinion.
Someone else agrees? I'm too confused to have my own opinions right now. Can I borrow yours?
I would have certainly called myself a Democrat without much self-consciousness.
I agree.
None of us are tribal people.
No, we are not.
Trump.
Boo!
What's the scenario under which I would want the government to force me?
Ooh, I know. It's when the government is not Trump. I would never let a Trump government force me into a eugenics program. Is that what you're going to say?
I've considered creating a social media platform, right? If that could grow so big that suddenly the government would have an interest in forcing me to have people on it.
Or forcing you not to have certain people on it. Certain people who say certain things that the government would rather they didn't say. Never mind force. The government shouldn't even have the power to influence private companies in that way. It's a good thing the government's never done that. The Democrat government, I mean. The Trump bad.
Unless somebody is harming people or, guilty of fraud, i.e. theft, stealing from people, we don't need the government involved.
Those are things the FBI has done. recently and regularly. Those are things the government does all the time. Sorry, I mean Trump's government. Sorry, I mean just Trump. Just Trump. Let's focus on not being tribal here.
I'm more extreme than most people on the left.
Yes. Because if there's one thing the left is good at, it's honesty. And you are extremely honest.
Like, I do think at this point in history, you should be able to have a social media platform and exclude any specific group you want and just say, that's the way we do it, right? And if you don't like it, boycott us.
Or tell the world that we're a blight on free speech. That's what people are telling you, isn't it, Sam? That Twitter and Facebook and Google and YouTube and just about every mainstream news network, they are the various inflamed boils of a painful monkeypox rash on the tongue and lips of an otherwise free and informed society. They're not asking the government to fix anything. They're saying how nice it would be if all these big tech companies weren't quite so tribal when it comes to government partisanship. It's becoming increasingly difficult to stay in character. You're right, Sam. I agree.
Right. So, like, I wouldn't have said this in 1964 when we have to pass a Civil Rights Act.
But it's different now because everybody's civil rights are perfectly and equally intact.
But at this point, I think you should have the right to be an asshole who destroys your reputation and suffers the penalties.
Best right ever. I would also like to extend the right to suffer penalties equally to everyone. But I guess that would just be a whataboutism.
So I think if you want to just have a social media network for beautiful people, right, or people who are, guys who are over 6'2" and blonde hair and blue eyes, right, I can't get on. You should feel free to, raise money for that enterprise, launch it, and I'll laugh when it fails.
You'll laugh when the government shuts it down, Sam. When the FBI raids their headquarters and arrests everyone, you will grin smugly to yourself and pretend you never said any of this. Yeah, and you'll be right to do so, because those people have personalities you don't like.
You shouldn't knowingly be able to turn your mob on a private citizen and ruin their life.
Unless you are Barack Obama and your mob is the FBI. Or an army of drones.
I think Trump is essentially, we got Alex Jones as president.
Oh, indubitably. Indubitably. Unequivocally. Those two have everything to do with each other. Can you give us a quick take on what Hunter Biden's been up to?
It's Hunter Biden, right? It's not Joe Biden.
You are a very smart man, Sam Harris. How do you feel about the FBI deliberately lying about Hunter Biden's laptop and big tech censoring any true information about it?
Just the level of misinformation, disinformation, lying, the charlatanism, the conscious fraudulence of everything at scale.
And the mass censoring of anyone who questioned the outcome of the election to which that disinformation led?
And the targeting of individuals with known consequences.
Yes, and when the Biden regime threw countless innocent people into federal custody without trial for a year and a half and counting, for the crime of peacefully making their voices heard in person when they weren't allowed to do it in the media?
That is a human sacrifice. We know that person's life is just never the same again because he's turned tens of millions of morons on that person. And, vicious morons on that. That's the core of the Trump phenomenon is now and has been for many years. Really since the beginning. Certainly since he became the front runner and certainly since he became elected in 2016. It's a personality cult.
Just to play devil's advocate, Sam, it is conceivable that some people, might support a political candidate because of that political candidate's policies.
I probably agree with half of his policies or more than half of his policies. It's not a matter of policy. It's a matter of having someone who's totally unfit to have power be given more power than any person in a generation.
Some might say, Sam, so I mean, some weird, crazy people might say that if the voters are in favour of his policies and he enacts those policies, then he is indeed fit to be bestowed with the power to do so. And you've just confirmed that you agree with his policies. You just don't like his personality. So yes, you're right, this is a cult of personality going on here, and it's completely, embarrassingly shrouding your ability to see politics in terms of policies. And like millions of other deranged lunatics, you would gladly plunge your country into inflation, recession, domestic tyranny, and war just because of a grudge you hold against one person's personality. What kind of people would do that?
If they're not actually clinically, diagnosable as psychopaths, they're the next best thing. These are people who are so malignantly selfish and so careless with respect to the consequences of their actions in the lives of others that if you own a platform or you're overseeing a public company that owns a platform, why should the government force you to keep these people on?
They shouldn't. By any defensible ethical standard, they shouldn't, but they do. Because that, Sam, is how totalitarian governments necessarily operate.
So what's the mob gonna do on January 7th and 8th and 9th?
Which mob? Antifa? BLM? They're going to keep doing what they've always done with impunity while everyone else is locked up, you prick.
I don't know. It's an extreme move to say you can't be biased.
I don't think saying anything is an extreme move. I think some sayings are extreme sayings, and I think some moves are extreme moves. I even think some sayings can lead to some moves, but I don't think speech is violence. Sam, wouldn't you agree? Or does it perchance depend on the direction of the bias?
My criticism of Trump is totally nonpartisan.
Correct. You're not interested in policies, after all. If you were, you'd have far more criticisms about Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, because it's their party's politics that have stolen America from its citizens and handed it to its enemies. As we've established, you're not interested in partisan politics, you just hate one man's personality.
And I think Liz Cheney is a total hero.
And not because you like her personality or any of her policies except one. You just like that one policy she has of getting rid of that one guy whose personality you hate. So it's not just a cult of personality, it's a cult of hate.
Here's a guy who is capable of anything.
A good quality in a leader.
Right, he's not ideological.
An excellent quality in a leader.
But he's a black hole of selfishness.
A baseless, childish insult. He's the only president in living memory to have left office with less money than he went in with. And as it turns out, fewer civil liberties than he went in with. In any case, as politicians go, how the hell is he selfish? Who do you have any hope of electing who is not selfish? Do you think any career politician is a truly altruistic person who has your best interests at heart? I would remind you that the other two options were Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Two people who have shown beyond reasonable flying colours that they will screw over everyone for money and power. Remember all those crazy things Trump did? Like sabotaging America's fuel industry and selling your emergency oil reserves to the highest bidder? Oh wait, that was Biden. Remember when Trump tripled your gas prices and blamed it on a war he was unable to prevent, and to which he sent billions of taxpayer dollars to no apparent avail. Oh wait, that was Biden. Remember when Trump had American forces stagger clumsily out of Afghanistan like an old man trying to run up a flight of stairs, leaving billions of dollars of military equipment and countless American lives for the Taliban to do with as they please? Oh wait, that was Biden! If Trump did any of these things, you would be citing them right now as evidence that he is a black hole of capricious selfishness who is unfit to be president. So what did he do in his 4 years of office that makes you think another 4 years would be a recipe for disaster this time around? Spoiler alert, nothing! You have cited nothing because there is nothing. He didn't ruin the country. He didn't ruin anything about the country. He didn't ruin the country's reputation. He made ordinary Americans love him, while, despite being the only president in living memory not to bring the country to war, he still managed to make America's enemies fear him. And by America's enemies, yes, that does include you, Sam Harris. His policies were on point. His results were positive. The only reason you hate him and would gladly subvert your democracy to get rid of him is because you don't like his unpredictable personality. And to repeat, an unpredictable personality is a good quality in a leader. If you could predict exactly what your leader is going to do, you wouldn't need a leader. You would just do whatever your own predictions dictate. And I say this as someone who doesn't particularly want to be led. But if I am to have a leader, I don't want someone who will smugly smile at me and lie to my face and then predictably self-destruct every vessel he's in charge of just because the enemy paid him to. I guess I'm biased like that, but don't you dare tell me that I can't be. So please, do tell us why the information on Hunter Biden's laptop was censored across mass and social media for our own good.
We're going to open up this laptop from hell, and the news cycle for who knows how long is going to be just conceivably just a nuclear bomb
of true information. Saying true things you don't like is an extreme move, so I shouldn't be surprised that revealing an entire hard drive's worth of true information that you don't like is a nuclear bomb. It's truth, Sam. It's just truth. When it's a lie that you want people to hear, it's intellectual honesty. When it's a truth you don't want people to hear, it's a weapon of mass destruction. I do wish Hitchens was still alive, so that you and he could have this discussion in light of the discussions you had about the last debacle over imaginary weapons of mass destruction. Mic drop.
It's like a coin toss for me, the Hunter Biden laptop thing.
Yeah, right, but for everyone who retains any semblance of consistency with any semblance of regard for intellectual honesty, it is not a coin toss. The coin has been tossed, and it landed true side up. Definitely not false side up, and not rolling on its side off the table and in between the cushions of your couch. Well, we can't really say what side up, but it's true, Sam. And the people deserve to know the truth. They deserve to know what Joe Biden and his family have been up to, where their priorities lie, where their financial incentives are coming from, and from whom they get their marching orders. A lot of us don't care what kind of personality might be lurking in Joe Biden or Hunter Biden or anyone else in their crime family. We don't even care how unpredictable they might be under the surface of how predictable they are. We just want the truth, Sam. We want to know what's really going on. And unlike yourself, we want everyone else to know what's really going on. We don't just pretend to stand for this. We actually walk the walk and actually stand for truth and intellectual honesty. A phrase that you have single-handedly killed in this interview, by the way. No one who's listened to your absurd slew of fatuous self-congratulatory self-deception will ever take that term seriously ever again. From now on, intellectual dishonesty it will be listed in the Urban Dictionary as a variation of honesty that alludes to the polar opposite of itself and functionally becomes a contradiction in terms. See social justice.
Listen, I don't care what's in Hunter Biden's. I mean, Hunter Biden, at that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared.
I believe you. Because that is something that could reasonably be predicted. And you don't care how many children are tortured and killed as long as you are able to predict it.
Even if whatever scope of Joe Biden's corruption is, like if we could just go down that rabbit hole endlessly and understand that he's getting kickbacks from Hunter Biden's deals in Ukraine or wherever else, right? Or China.
Even if the sitting president of the US turned out to be working for the Chinese Communist Party. Yes, do go on.
It is infinitesimal compared to the corruption we know Trump is involved in.
Such as?
It doesn't even stack up against Trump University.
Heaven forfend that a university would ever scam people out of their money and teach them nothing of worth. There is nothing the Biden family could conceivably be doing that is worse than Trump doing what every university does. Hey, Sam, what if the Biden family was responsible for sending an asteroid hurtling towards the Earth?
If there was an asteroid hurtling toward Earth, and we got in a room together with all of our friends and had a conversation about what we could do to deflect its course, right? Is that a conspiracy? You know, like some of that conversation would be in public, some of it would be in private. We have a massive problem. We have an existential threat, right? Politically speaking, I consider Trump an existential threat to our democracy.
But you don't consider an existential threat to your democracy to be an existential threat to your democracy. Got it. You know what? I'm going to say it. Democracy is an existential threat to your democracy. Figure that one out, Sam.
What I'm not suggesting, at no point was I suggesting we should stuff ballots.
And I'm not suggesting that anything like that has happened. Because I'm not allowed to. Private companies won't let me say any of that. That's all. The current government regime has no hand in it whatsoever. Don't you worry yourself.
What can you do with your own biases and your own to get the outcome you think is actually better, not just for yourself personally, but for the world?
Nothing. There is nothing I can do here. Because my biases, unlike yours, Sam, my biases are facing a certain direction that is forbidden by the ruling regime. Which never happened under Trump.
A first Trump term was bad.
How? Crickets.
And a second Trump term would be bad.
Same crickets.
And it literally doesn't matter what else was on the menu.
Asteroid hits Earth. Sufferers of Trump derangement syndrome affected worst.
Like the likelihood that you're going to get someone who's worse than Trump, given what I consider that is bad about Trump, is, I mean, it's on the order of 1 in a million, right? Like you're not going to get worse than Trump if you pick at random.
This is just rhetoric, Sam. It's toothless, beefless, white noise. You've been reduced to various watery iterations of I don't like this man. And that's fine. Please do express that. By all means, vote on that basis. But do you know what's not fine? Mass suppression of crucial information pertaining to elections. Yeah, it's not morally okay when private companies do it, and it's completely illegal when the government does it. But in either case, you don't care. You're completely on board with it because you don't like one man's personality.
And, Hillary Clinton, for all of her flaws, was not worse than Trump.
Whoa. You'll feel that? You feel that, everyone? Christopher Hitchens just rolled in his grave from thousands of miles away, but we all felt it, Sam. He wasn't buried, of course. He was donated to medical science. Nevertheless, All of medical science shuddered in its casket just now because of the putrid statement you just made. See, it's just rhetoric, Sam. If you're going to talk nothing but unsubstantiated rhetoric, then I'm going to do the same. And I'm going to do it better because I learned from the best. R.I.P. Hitch. Gone but never forgotten. Sam, forgotten long before you're gone. Get in line. Kiss my ass.
Joe Biden, we could have known Joe Biden was going to just be comatose in office.
We did. He is.
Not worse than Trump.
Sam, the only people who are worse than you at the fine art of rhetoric are the pathetic saps who yelled whataboutism at me several minutes ago when I brought up the two subjects that you just brought up, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Even though I substantiated my rhetoric with just a few concrete examples of the nightmares that the Biden regime has already inflicted in less than 2 years. To repeat, nothing the Trump administration did was even comparable. Even as a hastily tossed example, like perhaps the border wall, which the Biden regime has begrudgingly decided to continue, and maybe what they're calling the Muslim ban. I notice you haven't told us how you feel about that, Sam, but I can hear the high-pitched keening sound of your so-called principles reluctantly grinding together. I mean, it's like he was listening to you, wasn't it?
These are people who are normal politicians who are so much more constrained by predictable machinery.
Call me an old-fashioned iconoclast of sort, but if there are two things I strive to rage against, it's normal politicians and the machine. And I don't change those principles as soon as a bunch of commies are in charge.
There's such less of an opportunity there to destroy institutions that we have to rely on.
I don't want to have to rely on government institutions. I don't rely on government institutions because I am not a communist.
Sorry, we have a point of view. We don't like these people and we like these people.
That's tribalism, Sam. We like these ideas, we don't like those ideas. That's discourse. We like these people, we don't like these people. What you've described there is tribalism. Never mind the government. You would still have this issue, even in the absence of a government. That's why you're invoking the wild card of the government in a discussion where it doesn't belong. This is about social media, and it's a matter of social ethics. And when it comes to social ethics, you are in favour of tribalism, but only when your tribe does it. When the other tribe indulges in tribalism, you will lie and cheat and steal until they are destroyed, and then you will laugh at their bloody destruction. You're a vicious moron, Harris. You are capable of talking sense on some topics, but just like everyone else, you have a vicious moron in your conscience, and it's always been there, with nothing but a narrow hole between it and the surface. All the meditation and mindfulness in the world cannot keep that wolf from your door forever, and it's here. It's burst through that door, and it's torn up your furniture, it's eaten your grandma, and it's lying in her bed with such big, big teeth. You need certainty in your life. You need certainty in everyone's life. That is your fundamental failure. You can't stand the idea that there's anything that you don't understand. And you would rather commit to the certainty of everlasting evil than to even entertain the existence of the untamable chaos that is nature. The single most potent element of human existence. Letting the reins go to the unfolding. etc.